One of the most overheard frustrations in the halls or during Q&A of a digital marketing conference is a marketer's inability to get management on board with changing modes from that traditional to more digital marketing approach. Now, many industrial and manufacturing companies are well established and they've been doing sales and marketing the same way for a really long time. Now, don't get me wrong, much of it works, but much of it doesn't. And the scales are increasingly tipping to the latter. You know this, and you know that your company needs to innovate or die. But how do you get your established and sometimes conservative management team to get on with the times? Now, you might be surprised to hear what we think, because we don't believe it's the management team's job to change. It's your job to prove them that digital marketing and content marketing is going to add value to your company. That and more on today's Industrial Sage. I'm Danny Gonzalez.
And I'm Judson Voss.
And this is Industrial Sage. Okay, so it's the age-old question on how to really get organizational buy-in. This is, I know, a big challenge that a lot of people face and focus because, let's be honest, a lot of people are super resistant to change. A lot of this stuff is new, and even though there are proven models out there, it's one of those things that it's just, this is the way that we've done it, and this is the way, I'm preaching to the choir, everybody here knows this. Yeah. So how do we solve that challenge? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's complicated. I think first of all, you got to treat it like a business process, and number one thing is you have to know what you're talking about. I'm not trying to slight anybody, but folks come in, they work in marketing, they understand the parts of marketing they're doing today. They understand they need to move into digital marketing and a lot of pieces in it, but they may not have all the information already. And to me, it seems like, to be honest, it can be a train wreck. If you go in there and you don't know what you're talking about, God forbid your management team has kids that are between 3 and 20, and they have more information from their kids than you do, and they start asking questions you can't answer, you answer them incorrectly.
Could be a problem.
Yeah, it causes a credibility issue there. So I think you have to have that piece of it going first. If you don't know a lot about it, that's digital agency, that's what they're there for. Maybe you don't use them for everything and forever, but definitely figure out what you know and what you can do and hire out for the other pieces, because the end result is you want success, and so you need to have the right people in there in the first place to make it happen.
Right, and I think to that point too, digital market, it works, we know this, but there's a lot involved, there's a lot of things going on, and so anyways, but making sure, even just at a bare minimum, know what you're talking about. So that you
be able to answer some questions.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else on that there?
So the statistics of it, having the numbers. I think I see two things personally that would come across, and that is either you go and you argue to your boss, we need to do it because everybody else does it. That's one. Right. Or we need to do it because our competitors are doing it. And that's number two. Both might be valid arguments, but without the numbers behind it, we don't really know. We're sort of flying blind. So I think it's a good idea to go out there, find out other people's success stories. If they are parallel to what you're doing, same type of business, same type of sales channel, that kind of thing. Don't go and take a B2C company that's selling Skittles online and then you're going to sell $1 million project or something like that. Not the same thing. So get success stories that are similar so that the management team can draw parallels to them and understand that. And then I think the biggest thing, if you're going to use the competitor as a model and say, our competitors are doing it, then you need to answer the question that the management team is going to ask about your campaign, which is, great, they're doing it, what are they getting out of it? And if your answer is, to be honest, I don't know, that they might be throwing good money after bad because somebody else was doing it, and so now they're going to do it too. Right. So have that information. There's a lot of great tools. I use SEMrush personally. There's other ones out there that do it, that look at, like from a PPC standpoint, that tell me what my competitors are running, all the way down to the actual ad.
Right. Yeah.
So I actually get, this is a bad trick, but SEMrush, they actually give you a Google Ads from your competitors, and they put a template up there, and you can switch out the words. So if you find an ad that's performing well for the competitor, you switch out a few words to make it yours, and you can run it too, and assume you get the same results. But do that competitive analysis, see what kind of money they're putting into it, what they're getting out of it.
Right. And I think another thing too, when you mentioned with stats on that, there's some great stats out there, and I know that traditionally manufacturing and industrial companies have kind of felt like, I mean, the whole point of the series, because we kind of, we're behind a little bit, behind the times, but the exciting thing and the cool thing is that it's really, there are metrics coming out that basically saying, hey, look, the manufacturers they're really stepping up their game. And then it's not just at this point, hey, we want to be industry leaders, although there's a lot of truth to that. But the Content Marketing Institute, for example, came out with a great report last year. It was on 2017 and the uses. And what they saw from 2016 to 2017 was a huge spike in increase in content marketing. And so being able to arm yourselves with that kind of information and saying, look, this is stuff that's happening in our industry. Here's trends. Here's reports. Here's what they're seeing. Here's benchmarks. And it's not just me just saying, oh, I think we should do this because I think we should do it. It's a lot of other companies, a lot of other manufacturers they're doing this. And here's the stats to back that up. So I think the more I think you can build that credibility in that case, I think makes a lot of sense. And obviously the competitors it's a little compelling. I mean, there's nothing else. I know it's always funny that you go to some sort of trade show, then all of a sudden whatever competitor they've got, they got this great new video, or they got this new trade show booth, they got whatever. It's all of a sudden, we need this. we got to have this. And so I mean, to a certain truth, I will say if your competitor is using digital marketing and you're not, I would argue that's not good money chasing after bad. It's a good use.
Right.
You
just might not want to do it the same way they do it.
There you go. Right. Yeah. But
I agree with that. Yeah, and so the other pieces that go into it, you're talking about that. One thing I think about is you need to know who you're selling to, selling this idea to. If you work in industrial and manufacturing, somewhere along the way, there's going to be a chunk of your management team that are engineers. And so know how to sell to engineers. That should be what your job is in the first place, just outside of your organization you're selling to. And they want numbers, they want stats. So put that concrete information in front of somebody, and I don't blame them. I would like to, before I do anything, have some actual numbers that tells me what I'm getting at.
At the end of the day, it's a business. I mean, too, right? So it's really essentially making the case, building that case, almost putting together a presentation, almost just saying, look, it's a little bit of an educational shift to saying, this is what we're seeing. This is what's going on in the industry. This is what other companies that are similar to us are doing. They may not be competitors. Maybe they are. If they are competitors, it's another piece. Here are areas that they are, for lack of a better word, they're besting us. They are getting more reach, or they're using, I don't know, we're seeing banner ads, we're seeing all this stuff, you're seeing them float all over the place. How come we're not doing that?
Right.
Or we're starting to get feedback from, maybe talk to your sales team and get an understanding, why are we losing some of these other deals, and who are some of these other competitors that are coming up that we've never heard of who these guys are. And they're using videos, they're doing all these different things, to build that. To say, okay, look, there's a real need for it, and if you can really put a dollar figure to that, we lost this sale because of whatever.
That's true. That's
interesting.
True.
I think that really helps to kind of make it a little bit more than just, I think we should do this because it's cool.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Which, let's be honest, as marketers, we can get lost. I mean, I know I can't get lost in all the cool software. Oh, you can do all these things. With the MarTech stack in particular, I mean, I think there was a report that came out, in 2011, there were 150 different marketing types of software.
Okay.
So 6 years ago?
Yep.
Now, I think they're saying it's almost 5,000. So it's super easy to get lost into, this is so cool, we can do this, and we can understand this or that, we can understand, what traffic's coming to our website, and, but without having that context and a plan, then it's kind of like, it's cool, but it's like a cool toy, So
and that leads into the whole thing about having an ROI model. You can spend money on that, but why are you spending it? What are you getting out of it? I think. Take a manufacturer. I mean, you got a production team. They can't go to the management team and say, we need to buy this $1 million piece of equipment, and they say, what are we getting out of it? And they're like, well, it's really cool.
Exactly.
That's not going to happen.
Done.
Yeah. So I think you should take the same approach that the other guys do. If they want to buy an asset, you need to come back there and say, here's what the asset's going to do, and here's what we're going to get out of it. It's going to pay off in this period of time. Right. And I think that's powerful. And it's hard to argue, too.
Well, and I think you just said a really strong key word there for me, and that was asset. So you think about it, you're buying a piece of equipment. It is an asset that is going to be have some component of generating revenue for the organization. And I think traditionally, marketing it's an expense. It's this is something that we have to do, or we need to spend on it. I guess we have to do this trade show because we do these leads. Versus saying, no, we really need to look at marketing as a revenue generator. It really should be an asset, because if you have it properly set up, you're generating leads, and you're generating more leads, and here's your closing rate, and then we can forecast pipeline revenue and make things a little bit more sustainable there. And so I think that is really key. So if you treat it that way and go in and build and say, look, work backwards, and this goes to one of the previous episodes that we had on as far as digital marketing and how to figure out a budget on what that is work backwards and say, okay, if we get this, here's our expected return. Yeah. Here's what we think we can get out of it. And it's one of those things you can't promise the world, oh, we're guaranteeing you all this is going to happen, but at least writing out that framework saying, look, the stats that we're getting from Content Marketing Institute or other areas, these are the trends. This is what we're seeing. Yeah. So if we, if we could sell, one or two of our products, our product prices, whatever, I don't know, let's say $25,000, whatever. You start working backwards from there and say, okay, how many of X units do we need to sell to be able to do that? And then start moving backwards from there. Yep. And eventually you'll get to a dollar figure saying, this is what we need to invest in order to get the return over here, and just start working with that. Yeah,
there's lots of great information out there today, and I'll build a little matrix that has each channel, webinar, email, PPC, whatever it is, and then I'll say, okay, I'm going to have this much reach. I get this percent of click-throughs. We have pretty good data on that. Of those click-throughs, this percent become marketing qualified. Of that, this percent becomes sales qualified. Of that, we close this percent. And then, here's my average selling price. There's the number at the end. Add them all up. Here's my cost. Here's my revenue. Here it is. It's not an exact science, but it's a start. At least it looks better than I think it'll work.
Yeah, exactly. And too, even at a minimum, even if the organization doesn't, I guess the thing is really you're fighting a war, if you will, and I guess it sounds bad, right? But you're really looking at an organizational shift. There's a paradigm shift, really, actually, and it's not going to be a one and done kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And you really got to say, okay, here's a phased approach, and here's how we can slowly look to have little wins. Have a win. Make sure whatever that is, that it's measurable, it's trackable, and it doesn't necessarily have to mean, okay, here's the amount of revenue that. Now, if you can do that, great, that's awesome. But even just saying, look, bare minimum, our company is getting in front of, I don't know, we have 50,000 impressions now. Yeah. We didn't have that before. Yeah. Our competitor, all these other people have it, but now all of a sudden, our brand and our name is getting in front of 50,000 people or at different times, different places that they might not have before. So that's a little win. Obviously, if you can generate leads and that would
sell
be
stuff.
If you can sell some things, that'd be a little bit better. But at the end of the day, unlike a magazine article that you put out, you can't report that and say, hey, we got this magazine and we spent X amount, spent $5,000 on this thing, and we think, well, the subscription, the circulation is 10,000 people, and that doesn't necessarily mean you got in front of 10,000 people, and so.
Or that they cared.
Or exactly.
The ones you got in front of,
they're doing whatever they do with it.
And I think you can have that confidence too to go in there and say, okay, I ran this banner ad on this website or in this newsletter for an industry thing or something, and say, here's the results I got.
Right.
What were our results in the print ads?
Right.
And there's no way to know. So some information is better than no information.
Exactly.
And I think most management folks know that intrinsically. You just have to lay it down in front of them and give them some ammunition. Give them a reason to make that change. But I like what you said, you're sort of fighting the individual battles and not the war. I think the other thing I would say is try to fly under the radar. So if that first one doesn't go so well, not a lot of people know about it. It's sort of a mix of, I want to do a campaign that is going to impact a lot of people so that I can politically show that it works for a lot of folks. At the same time, maybe the first one, I like the idea of just sort of fly a little under the radar. If it doesn't work, quietly go off and tweak it. If it works, then promote the heck out of it to everybody and let everybody know that this is the savior.
Right. Yeah. And then build that case and and go for it there. So.
Yeah. Exactly. I think the other thing you do, and this is where a lot of folks get tripped up, is you have this innocuousness of what a win looks like. So you're like, okay, I'm going to run the campaign. They gave me this money and everything. You get to the end, and it's like, okay, we did this and we got this and that, and management is coming back saying, oh, was that good or was that bad? and who's telling me? The guy that asked for the money in the first place.
Sure, yeah.
So I think having an agreement ahead of time that says, a win looks like this, based on industry information. We're going to get this many impressions, this many clicks, whatever it is we're trying to get, that's a win. And now we'll come back afterwards and we have an objective number to look at and say, yeah, that what we all agreed would be a win, that was a win or that was not a win, and here's why.
Right.
So I think that's important to have. Otherwise you come back and you're sort of spinning your wheels again. You're like, okay, it worked, let's get more money. And like, that sure really worked.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, which I think is just so crazy if you think, just obviously being a little versed in digital marketing, but just going and looking back, just think about how selling, hey, look, we're going to get in this magazine and it's going to be whatever, 10 grand and we're going to get in front of all these people and that's it, versus saying, we're going to spend 10 grand and I'm going to tell you exactly, maybe not exactly everything, because there's a lot of other areas maybe that you can't, but you can measure a big chunk of it and say, here's what we got. So when you're comparing, hey, we're going to spend 10 grand on this, and we're not really going to be able to tell what we're going to get out of this, versus we're going to spend 10 grand on all these different areas collectively, and we can tell you how many people we drove to our website, increased traffic, leads that we are generating, and hopefully eventually, ROI on revenue that we've generated. It's kind of hard,
Yeah,
Wait
exactly.
a minute.
And it's good to remember that you might be selling this idea to your boss's boss, but your boss's boss has a boss too, and he wants to know what he spent the money on. And good or bad numbers are indifferent. At least having numbers is useful.
Yes.
If you spend 20 grand on a campaign and the guy, if you're a large enough organization, 3 steps above you, says, hey, to his VP or whatever, what did you spend 20 grand on? And he can pull out a PowerPoint you did post-mortem from the campaign and say, we did this, this, and this. We're pretty excited about it. That helps, as opposed to, we ran some ads and things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, makes total sense. I think it's like selling a little bit to really at the end of the day, the CFO, it's like selling to the guy who holds the purse strings, and just being able to, because at the end of the day, they're the numbers guys, right?
Should be.
Or ladies. Yeah. Numbers guys or gals, right?
They keep you in business.
Yeah, they kind of keep you in business, and so it's important. So if you can go to them and you can really prove out, this money I spent here, we generated X with this, whatever. It's like, okay, done, a no-brainer. Well, of course we're going to spend more on this, or we'll do more if we're generating leads and we're doing this with it. Yeah. Okay, well, why wouldn't we?
Yeah.
So that's, I think, really the goal and where you kind of want to track.
Absolutely, and I think sometimes you just have to have the confidence too to say, okay, if we're going to get a win here, we all agree this is what a win is, then we need to agree that we're going to keep spending money on this. If it's a no-brainer, then let's agree up front that that's what we're going to do. I think you don't want to leave it sort of up in the air. You want to say, okay, if we get a win, here's the next place I want to go.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. Because I think you have to have that next step. Because you've got momentum now. So now it's like, okay, that worked out well. Let me go back and work on the next thing. And 3 months later, I come back and they forgot what digital marketing is. And, you're sort of starting over a little bit. So it's like, I've got a plan. And again, it's a business thing. They like to see plans. They like to know what you're going to do, what the impact is on the next thing and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sounds
easy, doesn't it?
It's very easy. It's just like, boom, done, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. Any other tips or any other things you might recommend?
No, I think the key is just those steps. Know what you're talking about, develop an ROI and develop a plan, and then develop what the next step is going to be and what a win is going to look like. And if you can get those pieces in place, that's useful. And again, I think starting small is the key. I see so many organizations where somebody comes in and they're like, we're going to do
the whole
80
thing,
things at once.
Yeah,
and everybody's got this glazed over look on their eye and they're like, no, we're not going to do any of that. But if you go in there and all you do is say, I'm going to run an ad in XYZ newsletter, and it's a really big deal in our industry, and that ad's going to go to a landing page and they're going to sign up for something, and we're going to send them emails, and then if they click on some of the stuff in the email, our salesperson's going to call them, and now we've reached somebody that we haven't reached before.
Right.
I think that's a big campaign just to start off with. And I think if you start there, and I think as marketers too, you'll learn what works and doesn't.
Sure.
So you don't have to go and repeat the same mistake across all of these things. You can just do it once here and perfect it before you move on.
Right. Yeah. No. That makes all the sense in the world. And I think the key for me too on that is just making sure that you really do have those metrics dialed in, and that you can report that and go back. I mean, that's really got to be the.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of one of the big differentiators. Right? So, but making sure you're doing that and you're,
and make sure you actually do it.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Don't get to the end.
It's
and then
very
not
easy to be like, oh yeah, and then because it takes time and you got to go through you got to figure out all these things but it's critical.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely critical. Yep. So, okay, great. Well, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. And we just listen. I understand that it can be a challenge. It can be. It can definitely be an uphill battle saying, oh my gosh, I don't get it. Sometimes people aren't getting this, but just keep plugging away at it. Really going in, with this model, and really just look for those little wins. Don't look to, we're going to win the whole war on this, whatever. Let's just make these little steps that are measurable, that you can make an impact to the business. You can prove that business case, and then you just go on to the next thing, and you go on to the next thing, and you go on to the next thing. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about this.
There you go.
Right, yeah. So, thanks again for watching. If you like all this stuff, which we hope you do, be sure to like and subscribe on all of our different social media channels. If you would like to subscribe to our iTunes, you can do that. We've got a podcast that it comes out and it goes right to your app every single week. Also, you can subscribe to our email alerts, which you'll get an email every week that'll let you know when the new video is ready to go. And lastly, if you have any questions, any particular challenges that you're facing and would like us to tackle, please reach out to us at IndustrialSage.com/questions. We'd be happy to answer them for you. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next week.